The cease and desist letter arrived on a Tuesday. It was 11 pages long, printed on heavy paper, with a law firm's letterhead I didn't recognize. The return address was a building downtown I'd walked past 100 times. The letter accused me of intellectual property theft. It claimed I had stolen a business concept from the sender, copied her branding, and built a competing company using confidential information she had shared with me in good faith. It demanded that I cease operations within 30 days, transfer my domain name to her, and pay damages in an amount to be determined by her counsel. The sender was a woman I had met exactly 4 times. Her name was Lauren. She'd been a friend of a friend, someone I'd had coffee with twice and dinner with twice over the course of about 8 months. I had not stolen anything from her. The business was mine. I had registered the LLC almost a year before I'd ever met her. I had the paperwork to prove it, filed with the state, dated and stamped, but the letter was very specific. It listed conversations we'd had, accurate ones, and it framed every one of them as a meeting in which she had shared confidential business information with me. It listed dates we'd met, it listed the names of the restaurants, it described in detail ideas she claimed she had told me about, ideas that bore a strong resemblance to features I had been building into my product. The problem was that the ideas weren't hers, they were mine. I had been the one telling her about them over those 4 meetings because I had thought she was a friend. I was being accused of stealing my own work, and the accusation had come with a law firm and a number. The business was a small software company. I had founded it 18 months earlier after leaving a job I'd held for 7 years. I had built the first version of the product myself in nights and weekends. Before I quit, I had filed the LLC paperwork the week I gave notice. I had launched the product in beta about 4 months later. It was a niche tool in a market most people didn't pay attention to. Project management software for a specific kind of small contractor. Plumbers, electricians, that kind of work. I had built it because I'd watched my brother-in-law try to run his own electrical business with 3 different apps that didn't talk to each other. And I'd thought there was a better way. By the time I met Lauren, the business was small but real, a few hundred paying customers, enough revenue that I'd been able to pay myself a modest salary, enough traction that I was starting to think about hiring my first employee. A mutual friend had introduced us at a birthday party. Lauren worked in marketing for a tech company, she said. She was thinking about going out on her own. She was interested in what I was doing because she was thinking about starting something herself and she wanted to learn from people who had already done it. I told her about my company. I told her about the early decisions I'd made, the mistakes I'd avoided, the features I was planning to build. Next, she asked good questions. She seemed engaged. She was easy to talk to. We had 4 meetings over 8 months. At the 4th one, she mentioned that she had decided to start a company herself. She didn't tell me what it was. She said she wanted to keep it quiet until she was further along. I didn't think much of it at the time. People start companies. It's a thing that happens. 3 months after that 4th meeting, the cease and desist letter arrived. I called my attorney the same afternoon. He read the letter twice, then asked me one question. He asked me whether anything in the letter was true. I told him no. He told me that was the only thing that mattered, but that we'd need to be able to prove it. I started gathering documentation. The LLC filing, dated 9 months before I'd met Lauren. The first commits to my code repository, dated more than a year before our first meeting. The original beta launch, with screenshots from the Wayback Machine showing the product live online before she and I had ever spoken. Email threads with my early customers, all dated. Invoices, bank deposits. The timeline was clear. Every feature she was claiming I had stolen from her had been built and shipped before she and I had met. But the cease and desist letter had also done something I hadn't expected. It had created a paper trail of its own. Lauren's attorney had filed claims that referenced specific dates, specific conversations, specific information. If any of those claims could be proven false, they weren't just unfounded. They were potentially fraudulent. My attorney went to work. He pulled the public registration records for Lauren's company. She had registered her LLC 2 months before sending the cease and desist letter, 11 months after I had launched my product. He pulled the archive of her company's website. The features she was claiming I had stolen from her hadn't appeared on her site until 3 months after my product had launched them. In some cases, the screenshots on her site were almost identical to mine. In one case, she had used a stock photo I had used on my own marketing page 6 months earlier. She hadn't built a competing company. She had built a copy of mine. And then she had filed a legal claim accusing me of being the one who copied. It took my attorney about 2 weeks to put together the response. It was longer than her letter. It included the LLC filings, the code commits, the website archives, the customer invoices, and a detailed timeline showing every claim in her letter to be either false or impossible. He sent it to her attorney. He copied the State Bar Association. Her attorney withdrew within 10 days. He sent a brief letter saying his firm was no longer representing Lauren in this matter and that any further correspondence should be directed to her personally. We never heard from her directly. There was no apology, no admission, no follow-up. The cease and desist letter was simply abandoned, as if it had never been sent. My attorney recommended that we consider filing a counterclaim. The behavior was likely actionable. False accusations made through legal channels in a way that could have damaged my business if I hadn't been able to respond. We had grounds. I thought about it for a long time. I talked it over with my wife. I talked it over with my brother-in-law, who had become my first employee by then. I decided not to pursue it. The lawsuit would have cost time and money I didn't have against someone who didn't have the resources to pay, even if I won. And I didn't want to spend the next 2 years of my life thinking about Lauren. What I did do was send a copy of the entire file, her cease and desist, my response, the documentation, to the mutual friend who had introduced us, not as a request for anything, just as a record, so that when Lauren told her version of the story, our friend would already know which parts were true. Lauren's company shut down about 6 months later. I never found out exactly why. The website went dark, the LLC was dissolved, and her name disappeared from the small circles of our industry where I had occasionally heard it mentioned. My company is still running. We have a team of 6 now, a few thousand customers, and the same product I started building in my apartment almost 3 years ago. The features Lauren tried to claim were hers are still in the product. They've gotten better. They've kept their original names. Every once in a while, when I'm signing a new partnership agreement or onboarding a new investor, someone asks me whether I've ever had to deal with intellectual property disputes. I tell them I have. I tell them the only protection that ever mattered was documentation. Filing dates, version histories, timestamps on everything. The truth doesn't defend itself. But if you've kept the receipts, you don't have to. If this story hit you, subscribe. Every case on this channel starts with trust and ends with the truth.